loves, and welcome to today's video. At the beginning of 2024, I believe I had like 52-ish books on my physical TBR, and my goal for 2024 was to keep my TBR at 50 books or less. I stopped counting how many books I was buying in about April, so I actually don't know anymore how many books I own physically, and I thought it would be a good idea to, first of all, catalog what I actually own. Second of all, set a goal of how many I want to read within the next calendar year. And 3, set my spending budget for next year's Canadian Independent Bookstore Day haul based on how many of these physical books I get to read. So this video is going to be going over the stacks that are on my physical TBR, letting you know what's in there, how long they've been sitting around on Read for. So let's get started. Okay, my entire TBR has now been added to Storygraph with the exception of one book that they do not have a listing for, and I will let you know when we get to that book. Before we go over the books, let's go over the stats. So, I own 81 books that I have not read. 96% are fiction, with only 4% being nonfiction. The top 3 genres on my shelves in the Unread are fantasy, science fiction, and horror. Those are my top genres overall usually. Fantasy coming in first because they're so long. I did add a custom tag for what year I bought the book just to help me keep track, and the majority of the books I purchased last year, and that is because I bought 2 large amounts of books from 2 specific authors, which are the most featured as Alfred Hitchcock from the Alfred Hitchcock Presents collections, Brandon Sanderson because of my obsession with Trust of the Emerald Sea, and Philip K. Dick. My unread books also contain 2 books that were DNFs that I have been trying to read since 2012 and have not been able to successfully finish, but because they are classics, I'm determined to eventually finish them. Let's go through stack by stack of what is on my TBR. The Alfred Hitchcock Presents books, I found a lot on eBay that had 10 of these. These are just short story collections allegedly curated by Alfred Hitchcock, vintage 70s copies, and these have fun names. I did read one of this and then went out and immediately bought a collection of 10 of them on eBay. So we have 16 skeletons for my closet, which has a story from Robert Bloch in it, 12 stories for late at night, which has a Ray Bradbury in it, 14 of my favorite suspense, which has a Daphne du Maurier, More Stories My Mother Never Told Me Volume 2, this one also has a Ray Bradbury and a Roald Dahl in it, Scream Along With Me, Alfred Hitchcock Presents I Am Curious Bloody, Dates with Death, Stories to be Read with the Door Locked, also has a Roald Dahl in it, and a Harlan Ellison, and an Isaac Asimov. I Want My Mummy. This one has a Theodore Sturgeon and Alan Dean Foster in it. And Breaking the Scream Barrier. We have those. Next, we have 3 Diana Gabaldon books. We have Dragonfly in Ember, Voyager, and Drums of Autumn. These are books 2, 3, and 4 of the Outlander series. I read Outlander. I haven't read any of the other ones yet because they intimidate me for how long they are. But I will eventually get to these. Maybe now that I'm focusing on my TBR, we'll finally get to them. I also have the 6 Tudor Queens series. This is a historical fictional accounting of each of the 6 wives of Henry VIII. If you watched my goal setting for the year, my goal is to finish this series. This next stack is my fantasy series. So we have Mistress of Dragons by Margaret Weis. I thought this was a Dungeons & Dragons book, so I bought it, but it is a standalone fantasy written by Margaret Weis, who writes a lot of the Dungeons & Dragons novels. We have the Poppy War series by R.F. Kuang. This was on my Christmas wish list and I got for Christmas. I'm trying to read all of R.F. Kuang's backlist before Calabasas comes out, so this is a high priority on my TBR. Then we have 3 books that I picked up at conventions or Comic-Cons. So these are small indie authors. We have Light of the Stygian Orb by Krista Walsh, and then The Crimson Man and the Crimson Boy by Patricia K. McCarthy. These are like vampire fantasies, and I think this one is an urban fantasy, but I was really excited when I bought these to support local authors and haven't read them yet. Lovecraft Country by Matt Ruff. This is like a thriller horror based in the American South. I loved the TV show, was devastated to hear that it was canceled, and decided to read the books. So this I haven't gotten around to yet, nor have I purchased the sequel yet because I'm waiting for paperback. Red Dragon by Thomas Harris. This is the first book in the Hannibal series. I loved Silence of the Lambs. I credit that with getting me into film studies, so I will eventually read this. Haven't done it yet. And lastly, Immortal Dark by Tigist Girma. This is a black horror fantasy about a school where there's vampires. This is such a stunning copy with sprayed edges and everything. I was very excited when I bought it. I think I even put it on my TBR for that month. And then things got off track and I have not read it yet, but hopefully I will soon because look how that's so beautiful. Here is my science fiction series, most of which is William Gibson. So we have Pattern Recognition, Spook Country, which are the Blue Ant series. We have The Peripheral and Agency, which is another series that I can't remember the name of. I do like William Gibson. I did read the Neuromancer series a couple years ago, bought all of these, was really excited about it. They've sat on my shelf. Hench by Natalie Zena Welshot. This I bought because I thought it was a standalone, and then after I bought it, they announced a sequel. This is about a woman who is working for a temp agency and then she gets assigned to be like a henchman for a supervillain or something. We have Futuristic Violence and Fancy Suits and Zoe Punches the Future in the Dick by Jason Pargin. These I just liked because of the titles. Zoe Punches the Future in the Dick. Wanted to read that, haven't done it yet. We have the Neil Stephensons, which is again very long books that intimidate me. We have Cryptonomicon, Reamd, and Fall or Dodge in Hell. All of these are over 1,000 pages. I bought them because I didn't want the library to yell at me if I had to keep them for a very long time to finish their 1,000 fucking pages. And then I didn't read them yet because they're 1,000 fucking pages. And the last series stack is Brandon Sanderson Cosmere novels. I went a little crazy last year. So we have Mistborn, Well of Ascension, Hero of Ages, Warbreaker, War of Kings, Arcanium Unbound, and then Yumi and the Night Painter. I'm planning to read all of these at some point. The first three, it was when I was first read Tress and was very excited. And then the other three down here, not including Yumi, are ones that I found in used bookstores. And I'm like, well, I may as well if I'm planning to read them. They're used. And then I wanted to make sure that the cover I got for the other secret project matched the Trust of the Emerald Sea I had. So I'm buying those even though I don't think I'm going to read them for a while because I have a lot of Cosmere to go through before I get to Yumi. Camera angle switch because I need to be on this side of the coffee table to get the standalone. We have the original illustrated Sherlock Holmes. This is the book that has been on my TBR for the longest. I have technically marked it as DNF because I spent a year trying to get in as far as I possibly could in it, and I only made it to like 120 out of the 600 pages after an entire year because I just can't read that much Sherlock Holmes all in one sitting. So eventually I will get through this. Next up we have some nonfiction. We have Lords of Chaos. This is about the rise of the satanic metal underground. I enjoy metal music. I also find it really interesting how things like metal music and D&D can be accused of being satanic. So I thought that would be an interesting read. I have Jimmy Buffett and philosophy because I am a parrot head. Why not look at the philosophy of his music? I have a Jimmy Buffett shrine next to my Keanu Reeves shrine, so I bought this to add to that once I actually read it. This is the book that's not included in my stat because Storygraph couldn't find it. It's Planning to Peak in Archery by Larry Wise. This is about planning to peak in archery and the mental game. Coincidentally about this book, I was at an archery competition in January and I bought this book, and then I went back to where the people I was traveling with were, and I was like, oh hey, I just bought this book. And one of the people I was with was like, you know that that guy's right there, right? The author who wrote that, he's one of the judges. So then I went over and I did get him to sign it for me. So really sad Storygraph doesn't have this noted as a book that exists. Also on the archery sporting vein, we have In Pursuit of Excellence, which I have started and tabbed. I just want to take my time with it. This is a sports psychology book about how to get into the correct mindset to excel in sport and how not to second guess yourself, how to decide to excel. But those are my nonfiction books, my 4%. Next we have some Philip K. Dick short story collections. We have The Eye of Sybil, The Minority Report, and Second Variety. These are just collections of his stories. Philip K. Dick is one of my favorite authors, and he has written a lot. So I figured it'd be nice and easy for me to get these collected volumes of his work, especially because 2 of them I happened to run into at a used bookstore. So I'm looking forward to these because he is one of my favorite authors. In my big, chunky, expensive book collection, I have S by J.J. Abrams. This is a mixed media book about the ship of Theseus and 2 people writing notes back and forth in the book discussing their theories, and it has like postcards and stuff shoved into it, like little notes, and I'm really looking forward to digging into this. Because I loved House of Leaves, which plays with format, I'm looking forward to delving into another book that plays with format and has some mixed media, but definitely something that needs like some time and individual focus to get on. Then we have this chonker, which is the big book of cyberpunk. It is like 1,000 pages of cyberpunk stories. It is also, you know, a big book, so double columned. This will take me a very long time to read, but I think it's really a cool way to dip your toe into a bunch of different authors, see which ones work for me and which ones don't. Onto the standalones, we have 3 stacks. We have hardcovers, we have trade paperbacks, and we have mass market paperbacks, and these are already sorted in length of number of pages, just because it looks nice on my shelf that way. So we have It's the World Birthday Today by Flocka. This is the keyboardist for the band Rammstein, which is one of my favorite bands, so I'm looking forward to reading that. Persuasion by Jane Austen. This is a classic. Couldn't tell you what it's about, but I did win this very beautiful copy of it in a giveaway, and maybe that's what needs to convince me to read a classic, is to give me a very pretty version of it. A Family Business by Jonathan Sims. This is a horror novel about someone whose family is recently deceased and she hires a cleanup service. I really loved the Magnus Archives, which Jonathan Sims wrote. It's a podcast, so I'm looking forward to reading one of his written works. Emma Donoghue, Learned by Heart. Also won this in a giveaway, and I have enjoyed quite a few of the other Emma Donoghues I've read, so I'm looking forward to that. Octavia Butler, who I have read The Parable of the Sower and The Parable of the Talents, which I did end up enjoying in the end. I was a little iffy on it in the first book, but brought it home in the second. This is a vampire novel, so I'm looking forward to what Octavia Butler can do with one of my favorite genres. And The Invisible Life of Addie LaRue by V.E. Schwab. I think this is about someone who travels back and forth in time, but I couldn't tell you, honestly. I've heard really good things about it, and a friend was giving away her copy, and I'm like, sure. I've heard good things, I'll read it eventually. Paperbacks, we have Once Upon a Predator by Alex Locke. This is a thriller novel. A friend of mine went into their local bookstore and was like, give me something by a local author because my friend reads too much and I have no way of knowing what she has and hasn't read. And this is what the person at the bookstore recommended for her. I haven't read it yet. Feel kind of bad I haven't read it yet. I'll get to it eventually. Una Out of Order. This is about someone who every night on New Year's Eve, she switches to a different part in her own timeline, so she's not living her life in chronological order. Melissa, this is a horror novel about some teens on a haunted island amusement park. The Wild Dark by Catherine Silva. This is a horror novel about someone who's in an isolated cabin and then ghosts start coming out of the forest. This was recommended to me by the staff at Little Ghost Books in Toronto and is a signed copy, so I'm looking forward to hopefully enjoying that one. Recursion by Blake Crouch. I read Upgrade a couple years ago, loved it. Bought the rest of Blake Crouch's like techno thrillers. I did like Blake Crouch's Run, which I read recently, so maybe that will spark me to actually get around to this one. This is the newest book on my physical TBR, Scythe and Sparrow by Bryn Weaver, because book club keeps making me buy the first book in a series and then I feel like I have to go through and buy the rest of the series. I did enjoy the second one. It wasn't as good as the first. I'm hoping that the third one can wrap up the series in a satisfactory way. This is a dark romance series about a series of brothers who are all like criminals in some way and the serial killing women that they fall in love with. Mary by Nat Cassidy. I bought this before I read Nestlings and I didn't really like Nestlings, but I'm hoping this one's better, so that's kind of why I've been putting it off. We have BioShock Rapture by John Shirley. This I found in a used bookstore. I did really enjoy the BioShock games. I did have to watch other people play them though because the splicers creeped me out so much I couldn't play them myself. John Shirley is also known for writing cyberpunk novels, so I'm interested to see how much I'll like this one being based on a intellectual property that I already enjoy. We have Geraldine Brooks' Horse. This is about a record-breaking Civil War era thoroughbred, and it is a novel of art and science, love and obsession, and our unfinished reckoning with racism. All of that through a racehorse. I won this book in a giveaway, and I will eventually read it just because I'm very curious as to how a book about racehorses is also about racism. Lastly, Pachinko by Min Jin Lee. This is about a multi-generational family from Korea living in Japan. It is, again, a long book that intimidates me, but I've heard such great things about it that I'm hoping to eventually love it when I read it. And our final stack, we have Starship Troopers by Robert Heinlein. Apparently, this book is about fascism and kind of supportive about it, but I've watched the movie, so I was interested to read the book. Zodiac by Neil Stephenson. I went on a Neil Stephenson spree when I bought this and the other 3 books. This one is a little bit shorter, so I'm hoping that like I can read this and see how I'll feel about those longer ones. This is the second book that I've previously DNF'd, and that was George Orwell's 1984. I want to finish this because the first time I read this, I was 17, and I didn't quite have the same understanding of the world that I do now. Also, the world has changed since I was 17, and not for the better, so I'm hoping that at some point I'll really read this because I think in our current climate it's important to read. Islands in the Net by Bruce Sterling. This is one of those seminal cyberpunk genre books. I'm hoping that I enjoy that one. We have more Philip K. Dick with Lies, Inc. This is one of his final novels, and it explores totalitarianism, reality, and hallucination, so that sounds interesting. Call of Cthulhu, H.P. Lovecraft. I don't support H.P. Lovecraft and what he named his cat, but I do have an interest in learning where Lovecraftian horror had its origins, so I will be critical when I read this, but I will read this. We have Mountain Fast by S.J. Shank. This one, along with the next one, Black Chuck by Reagan McDonald. These I got in a mystery bundle that I purchased from Little Ghost Books. The theme was vampires, so I'm assuming these have vampires in them. This one says, the fortress is haunted, he brought his own ghost. And this one says, guilt is a hungry demon. So that's all I know about these ones. We have Ruby Barrett's The Match Faker. Ruby Barrett is one of my favorite romance authors. This is about someone who uses a matchmaker service, and she thinks that she's meeting the guy she was matched with at the bar, but it's actually another guy with the same name. So I'm interested to read that one. Notes on an Execution by Danya Kukafka. This is about the different people who are impacted by someone who killed someone. Given all the focus on adolescence right now, this might be a book to read. I'm gonna have to prioritize these. And lastly is also one of the more recent books that I purchased, The Black Phone Stories by Joe Hill. I recently watched the Black Phone movie and wanted to read the story too, and I couldn't find this in Canada, and I found it when I was at Barnes & Noble's in the States on a trip when I went there for an archery competition, so I was excited to pick this up considering I couldn't find this in Canada. That's by Physical TBR, a brief run through of all 81 frickin' books that I own and haven't read yet. Now comes the hard part of putting all of these back onto my shelf. I have concerns about whether they will all fit. The new Unread Shelf sorting system. We have series I've already started up there. Tudor's Queens is first because that's the series I need to finish. And then we have Cosmere and the Outlander series. Then we have hardcover books arranged in order of lowest to highest number of pages. And then we have the collections. So Lovecraft and Other Stories, O'Hale Stories, Philip K. Dick and the Big Book of Cyberpunk. Then we have paperback books, again in order of page number with short paperbacks and then the trade paperbacks and then my little tiny nonfiction section. And then these are series I haven't started yet. So you have the William Gibsons up there. A very random sorting order for these, honestly, because I was trying to keep them together but also have it look nice. So you have Hench and Immortal Dark, which are the two hardcovers. We have just various series that are the same height. And then we have the Hitchcock ones out in front. I wanted to put them up there where Wednesday is, but because they're old, I don't want them to get as much sun. So I put them below the level of the window. And then look, that's my graphic novel collection, which is over here, shoved in the corner. And that is my Unread Shelf. So while I made my best efforts to fit everything onto that one shelf, I unfortunately have purchased more books than fit on it. So there are some books that are going instead into my TBR stack. This is not a new thing. Usually when I do my TBR videos, I pull the books that I own off of that shelf and put them onto a different shelf, and I'll grab as I go, try and get through all of the books that I put in my TBR for that month. So I do have a stack that are gonna go there. First is Scythe and Sparrow. This is the last book in the Ruinous Love trilogy, and it just came out in February, so it's a very new release. If I finish this, I am finished the Ruinous Love trilogy, and then I can make a decision as to whether I want to keep the entire series on my red shelf or clean it out to put something else on there. It was already on my planned TBR for April. This was on my TBR in February. I really want to finish this series. I just keep prioritizing things over it. I am going to put a temporary hold on myself from putting holds on library books because I want to get some of these cleaned out first. The Poppy War trilogy, the Poppy War was on my TBR for March. I didn't get to it because I was behind on reading Babel and library books. I'm gonna keep this box set in my TBR stack because once I finish Poppy War, I want to get to Dragon Republic and the Brooding God before August. I may as well keep these all together because they definitely did not fit on that shelf. In Pursuit of Excellence, because this is something I've already started, and obviously it's on read, but it's not read yet. So let's keep that in the stack. I am slowly chipping away at it because it is something I have to kind of read and digest. It's sports psychology. It's a bit heavier than a horror novel. The original illustrated Sherlock Holmes is going to stay on my coffee table. It's a way of shaming myself into seeing it every day and being like, I really need to read those. Maybe it'll convince me to pick up and read a story or two every once in a while, so that's gonna stay on the coffee table. And then I might have jumped the gun on saying that I had 81 unread books because I do actually have 82 now. I went to the bookstore last night and it was to pick up something I pre-ordered that I'd already read. Blood Under Tongue came out finally. I had it pre-ordered since October. I read it in January. It's fantastic. I highly recommend it. But on a table right when I walked in, they had signed copies of Everything is Tuberculosis. I was a nerd fighter when I was a teenager. I've loved John Green's books since An Abundance of Catherines, and I have signed editions of his other books. I think I also heard something that he wrenched his shoulder so badly doing all these signings that he might not do signed copies again. So I bought this because this might be my last chance to get a signed John Green book. And Everything is Tuberculosis is a nonfiction book about tuberculosis. I don't have very many nonfiction books. That's like the one section of my TBR I could probably expand, but this is fairly short and I am really interested in reading it. I've been following John Green's TikToks about tuberculosis for so long now. I'm interested to learn about it. So that's going to go on my TBR for April and gets to stay in the TBR stack. So now that I know how many books are on my shelf, I do think I want to keep my shelf at below 50. That seems to be the number of books that will comfortably fit on those shelves without me having to do double layers. So I want to get it back to that by April of next year. The last Saturday of April is usually Canadian Independent Bookstore Day. My city's Independent Bookstore Day usually organizes events, they have giveaways, they have door prizes, they do discounts. So I do really love supporting my local bookstores on that day. And then based on how many books I read below that 50 is how many books I will get to buy on that day for next year. This year's Canadian Independent Bookstore Day hasn't happened yet. I'm thinking I will try and buy less than 3 books this year because I really need to get this under control. So if you made it through this whole video and you've read any of the books that I've talked about on my shelves, let me know which ones I should be reading first, which ones were quick reads for you, which ones were so good you couldn't put down and I need to read immediately, or leave the crown emoji for the 6 Tudor Queen series because I need to finish this year. If you enjoyed, like and consider subscribing so you don't miss the updates on when I read all of these things. Thank you so much for watching and have a great day.